Now, technologies in their own right do not represent opportunities. They enable opportunities to be exploited. You never have enough time. There's no such thing as work-life balance. You work when you need to work. It's 24/7.
It's interesting for me because obviously, as I said, this conversation has been 10 years in the making, as it were.
And the leader of any business today should be looking at what technologies are out there that helps us to become more efficient on the one hand, meaning reducing our costs, but still performing at the same level, if not increasing our performance, and at the same time enabling us to help our customers deliver success in their own right.
Hi everyone, welcome to another episode of the GCS Connect Leaders series. Today we've got an old friend of mine, an old network contact of mine, Jurek Sikorsky. He is a director of the Henley Enterprise Lab, which is a startup hub for businesses that are coming out of Henley Business School, which is part of University of Reading, which is my alma mater and where I went to university. Probably much cleverer people than myself that went there and in this hub. I've always wanted to talk to Jurek about this because he is a very experienced leader and entrepreneur and someone who's been very successful in his industry, pharmaceuticals and biotech, but also has helped a number of local businesses from the school and from his angel investments to become successful businesses. So it's great to speak to someone who's at once a successful leader, but also someone who's helped create successful leaders and successful businesses. So we go into a lot of detail about that, about startups, about challenges, about risks, about remaining positive, and how to create a great business. So I'm sure that'll be of interest to all of our leaders. So without further ado, enjoy the show. Good afternoon, Jurek. How are you?
Good afternoon, David. I'm very well, thank you. The sun is shining, I'm in great spirits, and the week is progressing very well.
Fantastic. Oh, that's great news. It's great news. So really good to speak to you, Jurek. So as we were just talking about before we came kind of onto the recording, this conversation has been nearly a decade in preparation, has it not?
Indeed, it has. But we've got here, and we're speaking.
We are speaking finally. So no, it's great. It's great to speak to you, Jurek. Jurek, do you want to just, obviously we're going to talk more about your background and in what you do, but in your role currently as the director of the Henley Enterprise Hub, which is part of the Henley Business School, which is part of the University of Reading, like what you're doing now, I think it'd be great for the listeners to really kind of understand that, so they can get a bit more of an idea of you and what your current role is.
No, very, very happy to. Well, my current role is as director of the Henley Enterprise Lab. The lab was set up about 18 months ago with the sole purpose of supporting the aspiring entrepreneurs that we have amongst our students and alumni, supporting them across that journey from I have an idea, how do I commercialize it, right through to when they launch a business, start to engage with customers, deliver some customer traction, i.e. sales, and move towards sustainability. Along the way, we provide a whole variety of support, and we're building that infrastructure. So there's a business clinic to start and discuss your idea. We have various competitions like the IDFS Business Idea Competition, an annual competition. We have an award scheme where businesses set up by students apply for awards, cash awards, to help them with defray some of the expenses of starting and running a business. The Henley Business Angels, where those that have started businesses are looking to scale can apply for business angel funding, which is equity funding. We have a summer startup bootcamp, a 1-week long course, which turns the traditional approach of starting a business on its head. You don't need to be forming companies, writing business plans, raising money before you've actually demonstrated that your idea, your business idea has merit, has viability. So we teach you how to make that first sale and secure validation. So that's what the Henley Business uh, uh, Henley Enterprise Lab is all about. And as you've said, it's part of the Henley Business School, and it's supporting those entrepreneurs and growing number of entrepreneurs at the university, not just the business school.
Fantastic. And it sounds like, to me, all of the things that you've listed there are all of the things that you have to do maybe to get a business going. But I mean, I guess sometimes people do that just off their own back without that level of support. And obviously, some people create very successful businesses. But I'm assuming that feels to the entrepreneurs themselves like something that's a real help, right? People don't think about those types of things, do they?
Well, they don't. One of the things that we actually is teach students is, the process of starting a business or translating an idea into a viable business. And we do that in a number of ways. I can give you some insight into what's involved in that, but it's about helping those students who are starting a business to succeed or reduce the chances of failure by being prepared and doing the right things and being free to trade. So, for example, looking at the regulatory climate and what the regulatory requirements might be in the sector where they are launching a business, so that they are aware and take the necessary step to ensure compliance with the regulatory requirements, particularly in such areas as healthcare, food and beverage, just to give some examples.
Fantastic. And obviously, we're going to, it's interesting for me because obviously, as I said right at the top of this conversation has been 10 years in the making, as it were. So when I was the Chamber of Commerce president, you were kind of involved with the Chamber of Commerce. And there was lots of kind of conversations at the time. And I've always looked at you as someone as kind of, not to use the word wrongly, but quite wise about business, Jurek, knows about business. And I think it's good for our listeners again just to understand how you come to be in this position where you're guiding leaders, where you're helping them to not make those mistakes. I'm assuming that comes from a place of actually having made the mistakes yourself and having the successes as well.
Yes, yes, yeah. Look, what comes to mind as I listen to you, David, is what Bill Gates said about when he read and gave a review of Phil Knight, who started Nike. He reviewed his book called Shoe Dog, and in that he said, "Look, the journey of an entrepreneur in starting and growing a business isn't a smooth one. It isn't about I've got this wonderful idea, raise money, and then you can scale and be very successful. It doesn't work like that. It's a journey that he described as messy, perilous, riddled with mistakes, sacrifices, setbacks, and the 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 entrepreneur that is successful is the one that persists, that stands up after they've fallen, brushes themselves down and goes at it again and again and again, but each time more intelligently. And that's one of the things that I've learned to being involved in starting businesses as well as joining founding teams in growing businesses. It's a tough journey. It is a tough journey. But if your mind is focused on delivering a successful outcome, you will weather those disappointments and those setbacks, and you will make sacrifices in order to achieve that. And it's an amazing memoir that Phil Knight wrote that I've read, and I always recommend to read that book for anyone that's starting out in a business, but not just starting a business. The person can actually be working within an established company, looking to advance their career and become a leader, and to know that the leader's job isn't plain sailing. It does experience the same disappointments, frustrations, setbacks, and similar. But you've got to be committed, and to achieve that success that you dream of, that aspiration that you have, in the same way that Phil Knight did.
Yeah, I mean, I've read that book. I was actually just looking in my bookcase to see if I can pull it out, which would be a good prop, wouldn't it, there, Jurek? But no, what I took from that book, and I think obviously there's been a film made with it recently. I think with Matt Damon and Ben Affleck, isn't it? Ben Affleck is
Yeah.
is the guy himself. It's all about Michael Jordan, isn't it? I think, and the shoes. But one of the things I took from that book, and it goes back to what you were saying there about mistakes, is he obviously when he was working with the Japanese, and then he realized that he had to make the shoes himself and like take back
Yeah.
production, etc., etc. He obviously realized very quickly, areas where, as a leader, like he had to make quite definite and quite kind of risky, some might say, risky changes, if you know what I mean. Changes in direction of the business. Um, and I think, for me, that was something I kind of you learn quite well. And sometimes people talk about it as happy accidents. You see where you're at, and then you decide,
Indeed.
right, okay, I'm going to kind of change the narrative in order to make it look good, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, yeah. Well, the book certainly conveyed to me, at almost every page, certainly several times at the end of each chapter, when I finished the chapter, when I first read it, I concluded this business is going to fail. But we all know Nike's not a failure. It's a very successful corporate enterprise. And if you walk down the high street of any town, any city, anywhere in the world, you'll find people wearing Nike shoes or Nike tops, garments of various descriptions. Um, but he's the first to recognize that, it's not plain sailing. You learn by your mistakes, and you do things better next time. And um, I think it was Thomas Edison who said, the biggest weakness of mankind is giving up. Don't give up. Go at it again and again until you get to where you want to be. Although the journey might be quite different to the journey that you planned.
So tell us a bit about your business background pre coming into an education. I think you've been in education for 10, 15 years. So coming up to that, how did you get to be here? How did you learn? How did you kind of
Yes.
learn your trade?
I learned my trade, as a practitioner. That's what members of faculty refer to me as. I'm a practitioner. I'm not an academic, although I do a lot of work at the business school here and the previous business school where I worked at, the London Business School. Um, so my background is in the industry, in the pharmaceutical industry, pharmaceutical, biotechnology, medical devices, diagnostics, and healthcare more generally. And I started my life out as um, a salesperson, selling a range of analgesics and antibiotics to general practitioners and hospital doctors. And I had to quickly learn to be able to speak with doctors on the same level. So went through an intensive 6-month training program, both in products, medicine, but also in how to help doctors make the right decision and prescribe the right product. Um, and I quickly progressed from there, having had the honor bestowed upon me as top salesperson in the country. I moved on to take up senior roles in sales, marketing, and business development. Um, and then joined with a number of my colleagues or persons that I knew externally to set up a company in diagnostics, with an investment, attracting an investment from the Boots company. The company was called Boots Celtech, the premier biotechnology company at the time that launched a diagnostic business. And it was a privilege to work for them, be initially the commercial director, then the general manager responsible for the business, and we built it from scratch with no products to become a global operation with about a third of our sales coming from North America, a third from the Far East, particularly in Japan, and the rest from Europe, with about 20% from the UK. So that's my sector. I had the good fortune also along the way to to take a company to the stock exchange, floated on AIM. This was SRS Technology, which was the last company that I had the good fortune to join the founding team and lead the IPO on the AIM market here in London. I was non-executive director in parallel to that of another company, a software company, and was part of the team that again was successfully listed on the AIM market, and had the good fortune to be CEO of a number of other biopharmaceutical companies, Proteus International, Cantab Pharmaceuticals, which was a spin-out from Cambridge University that we built into a FTSE 350 company. So a lot of experience in on the commercial side of the business. I'm not a scientist, but on the commercial side, sales, marketing, business development, as well as the leadership in the CEO role, chairman role, and also non-executive director. And I got perspectives from various directions and insights, and gained my experience, which I now share with students in supporting their journey when they're starting out with a business.
I hope they listen to you intently after that, Jurek. I mean, I think that what I take from that is obviously there's a number of like different journeys. I mean, obviously your journey within your career has been this very successful. And I take two things there, as you've grown within your career, and the different companies and the different teams, etc., what have been the main challenges that you've found? Have they been the same challenges each time, or have they been different based on different people? Can you, when you're talking to people and advising people, can you see that this is what's going to happen at this phase in your business?
Yes. Well, there have been multiple challenges experienced by the companies that I worked for, that I led, that can be best summarized as follows. So the ones that come to mind is the loss or lack of capabilities, for example, skills, knowledge, experience. You don't always have all the capabilities to be able to perform to plan. And you have to manage with what you've got and the resources that you've got. In other words, be resourceful. Limited capacity is a second one. You never have enough time, particularly when you're scaling a business rapidly. There's no such thing as a work-life balance. You work when you need to work. It's 24/7, because you need the time, and time is very precious and very often limited. So I would put that within that challenge of limited capacity. Competition has always been something that featured prominently as very dominant and strong, and one shouldn't assume that because you've got a different way of doing it or delivering a solution or have a different solution that it is better. Being different isn't better. You have to be different, yes, but importantly, you have to be better. And the challenge the challenge that every company faces is the challenge from competitors, strong competitors, particularly if you're entering a particular market. Then there is the challenge of winning customers. And all companies will say, if you ask the chief executive of any company to say, what is your number one challenge, they'll say customers, winning customers and keeping customers and growing revenues as a direct result of winning customers. But it's not just about winning. It's more than just being transactional. It's about keeping customers and developing those customers into what I describe as sales ambassadors, that they would go out and evangelize your products and their experience with your products and services. But winning customers is a challenge. Cash always features, where you would say there is insufficient cash, and at this moment in time, almost every company will say we don't have the cash to make the investments that we'd like to make to address our growth ambitions in an uncertain world. Then there are the costs. Whatever you estimate the cost to be, I always work with that assumption that the costs are always going to be significantly higher. That it's the unforeseen things that you need to deal with that cost money. So higher than planned costs is a challenge. Then there are and I've introduced this recently in my list, the unforeseen crises. You've had Brexit. We know about Brexit and how that disrupted the trade with Europe, the COVID pandemic. Then we have more recently the wars, and currently we have wars. We have displacement. We have economic volatility. I won't say very much about tariffs, but tariffs is a recent unforeseen crisis, as I would describe it.
We hope by the time this goes live in July that the tariff problem will be out of the way, but you probably not.
We hope so. We hope so. We hope so. We hope so. And of course, commercialization is always a challenge, which links back to winning customers and the challenge that poses in highly competitive markets. So those are the sort of challenges that I face, and interpersonal relationships, of course, will need to be included in that list. The bottom line, David, is there are many challenges, and you have to rise to them, and you have to adapt to those challenges.
And then just thinking about the point there when you talked about capacity and cash and costs and that sort of thing. When you look at growing a business and growing a successful business as you had, those are restraints on your business, right? And I go back to Phil Knight doing his deals and ordering too many shoes, and he couldn't actually afford to sell the shoes, could he? Then he worked out a way to sell the shoes and managed to get to the next chapter, as it were.
Well, he started, as you know, reselling running shoes from Japan, importing them from Japan and selling them in North America.
And he had to basically lie to them that he was the number one shoe seller in the world when he hadn't even sold one shoe.
Made a sale.
Think. So yeah. But what I was going to go into there was, and obviously I know that we have to have restraints on business, but when you talk about capacity, capability, cash, all those sort of things, is your advice to kind of stretch yourself, to challenge yourself, or is your advice to kind of have restraint and work within yourself, or there are different factors that you would look at? Because I think that's quite interesting, isn't it? Obviously, we can listen to the stories of Phil Knight and Bill Gates and whatever, and they obviously are winners, right? So they've done it right. But I'm sure you don't read as many stories of people that didn't. So,
well, implicit in the word challenge is risk. Because there is risk if you don't manage those, which for me, when looking at the challenges, I see the implied risk that there is there to the business and the success of the business. And I have a simple approach, which over the years has helped me enormously. So the approach is very, very simple in my mind. difficult to implement successfully in managing those risks implied in in challenges. But the approach is starting with anticipate and know the challenge. Don't bury your head in the sand. Anticipate it and know it, number one, which means really understanding, doing your research, talking to the people that you need to talk to so that you know what the challenge is. Then you need to, secondly, assess the risk that is posed by the challenge to the business. And how do you do that? Well, I have used a simple model, and I'm sure most CEOs will have similar models that they use when they're faced with a challenge. So how do we assess that risk? By determining, first of all, the potential impact on the business. I tend to use a simple 5-point Likert scale, from very limited impact to very substantial business threatening impact. And the second aspect that I look at is the likelihood or probability of occurrence, from very low to very high, again on a scale of 1 to 5. And I assess that working with the team, with the senior leadership team. And then what I do is, having done that and set a threshold, and the threshold will vary depending on the number of challenges that you are setting out. You will define and implement a strategy to mitigate the impact of that risk. So when it happens, when a new competitor, for example, launches with a very strong proposition, and I've been several times in that position, unexpected, a new competitor enters the market with a stronger proposition, then I know, okay, I have assessed that risk, and this is our mitigating strategy, and working with the team, working collaboratively with the team. This isn't just about issuing instructions, or isn't about issuing instructions. It's working collaboratively with the team. You shape that strategy that you already have to mitigate the impact of that risk, and you implement it, and you measure and monitor, and you meet on a regular basis to review the measurement. Because what you know, as far as the challenge is concerned, is what you measure. What you measure, you manage. And if you manage, you then stand a chance of successfully overcoming that challenge.
So I guess what we're talking about here is no surprises, even the occurrences that should be a surprise, such as a competitor designing a new product or a new drug, I guess that is better than yours. You should always be aware that those things are going to happen, and that every time you take on a challenge, take on a risk, as it were, you should be well aware of the things that could go wrong. I think I use this in recruitment quite a lot.
Absolutely. And everybody knows what they're going to be doing, because the strategy is already being outlined if a new competitor hits the scene and poses that challenge, which has that, I keep saying, referring to the implied risk, because there is a risk to the business that they can take your business, and suddenly, the revenue drops away and collapses.
And then how do you then balance that then with, or how do you get your leaders that you work with to balance that with positivity? Because you always strike me, Jurek, as quite a positive person, right? So, there's an element of that. These are all the risks. These are all the challenges. This is what could go wrong. How do you then balance? Because if you just looked at all the risks, you'd never do anything, right? So how do you balance that with the positives? So actually, if we do this, I've worked it all out, and if we do it, it's worth it. How do you balance that?
Well, it comes down to, self-belief and self-confidence. And that comes from within, and you've got to drive yourself. If you're confident and demonstrating confidence, and you believe in what you're doing, and you've taken steps to set out a strategy, which will almost certainly be refined depending on how that challenge emerges, others will follow. And one of the things that I always stress is, look, we need to be aligned. The senior management team needs to be aligned behind the strategy. and will play a part. Each and every one of them will play a part. And this is where the values come in, where you're playing out the values. For me, values are important, and what motivates me, and what drives me to deliver results. It's the new ROI you'll be familiar with, and the listeners will be familiar with ROI as return on investment. For me, ROI means something else. Um, Respect for the individual, respect for the company, respect for the competitor. Okay, because you are also their competitor. Number one, being open, being honest. That motivates me when I can be open and honest, and build trust um, in each other and towards each other. And the final thing for me is, working with a high degree of integrity. I feel that over the years I've been able to build that up, which has helped directly to motivate me and help me to believe in myself, um, and to know that one way or another we'll succeed.
Yeah.
And it's important to be, I'll stress, open. Being open. If we face challenges in your specific area, again, I'm talking about the senior management team. I prefer to call it the senior leadership team as opposed to manage. Manage suggests a bias towards administration. No, this is about leading. We have to lead as a team in order to successfully implement that strategy, in order to counter that risk or that challenge, and obviously mitigate the risk of the business being hit, and suffer by a fall off in financial performance.
And going back to positivity, I noticed that when you were talking about your career, you've used the word, I don't know if you know, you used the word called, I was fortunate enough, I was lucky enough to work with this team or that team or get this opportunity. I know that you're a successful businessman. I know you're very capable. So to me, it would be that luck isn't part of it. But do you feel lucky? Or do you feel lucky to be working with a
Of
team, or do you
course, of
feel kind
course,
of you know?
of course, of course. Um, Across my career, from the beginning, I can look back at something that has happened, and I thought, my goodness me, all these things have come together. What a stroke of luck! Yeah. So, so I bless luck as contributing. How it comes about, well, I don't know. But there have been many occasions when I said, "Thank you, Lady Luck, for bringing that." And when you read Phil Knight's book, he will also say, there was there was times where he felt lucky, but the important thing is you draw from that luck. You leverage, you take the opportunity. Um, and for me, one of the things that I have learned in the same vein is developing your entrepreneurial mindset, which is about finding new and better ways of doing things, and that usually comes about, when you've suffered a challenge, or you've been hit by a challenge. So finding new and better ways of doing things, being resourceful, taking action. It is important that you act decisively as a leader of a senior management team. Um, you've got to make and act on those decisions uh, very quickly, and at the same time foster that same making and acting on decisions quickly in members of the senior management team. So back to your point about luck, yeah, luck is part of it. I can look back and describe it as that was a lucky moment. And it was a lucky moment when I started out in my career. Having been at the postgraduate studying for an MSc at Bath University, um, I attended a careers fair. I didn't really want to go to a careers fair, but attending that careers fair changed my life. At
Mm.
that careers fair, there was a pharmaceutical company, several pharmaceutical companies, a recruiter, not unlike yourself, and I got talking to the recruiter, and I just blown over. And I said, yes, I would very much like to join the pharmaceutical industry, and I'd love sales, particularly when I reflected on the fact that the role of salesperson, medical sales representative, was very well compensated, and you got a company car, you got an expense account, and a salary that was twice my expectation.
It's a good start. That's lucky there, Jurek. I think I look at luck in like yourself. You have to know when those lucky moments have happened, right? And
Yeah,
take
exactly.
take the most opportunity out of those. Some people don't know it's happening. Like in business, sometimes you get an opportunity, don't you? A client calls you and this is it, and you're like, right,
Yeah,
okay, we have to
it's
do such a good job here. You have to turn your luck into something great.
yes. It's something that you didn't actually create. It's something that came about, and you should absolutely take every benefit from that moment,
Mm.
every benefit, um, and act decisively. And at that point, there was no hesitation on my part. I just said yes there and then.
Mm.
And honestly, I should have sat back and listened more. Sorry, and asked more questions and find out more, and then take time to reflect, sleep on it. Da, 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 da. Yes, but I didn't. I just acted there and then decided to wait for it. What's the worst that I can happen? I start the job. I don't like it. I go and do something else.
Get a new job. I think it's also when you were talking there about competitors, obviously you talk about competitors doing something really well. Sometimes you can gain market share. You can other competitors are having bad luck, and in this market at the moment, there's actually quite a lot of opportunities coming from other companies and competitors finding it really a real struggle and not able to get
Yeah,
going and failing.
yeah. Stay positive. Always have hope in the future, and that the future will be something that will reward you for hard work and commitment. One of the
Yeah.
things that I do remember very clearly on a number of occasions, my mother telling me, work hard. Okay, don't give up. If you believe in it, go after it.
Hmm.
Um, so that was a turning moment.
So coming back into it, obviously we talked there about the challenges of the market at the moment, and we talked about the difficulties of starting up a business. So when you now work with your entrepreneurs and the people within your hub and the people within your kind of you're doing angel investing with, what are the key things or the key piece of advice that you give them that really links into the challenging world of now that you think people should be more aware of now than if they were setting up a business when you started a business, for instance?
I would say that what I've taken away and what advice I would give those setting out on that journey as a founder or co-founder. Um, First of all, focus. Focus. So I'm at one with Steve Jobs here. Focus on the key things. And I like to define those key things or key projects, however small or however large they might be, call it initiatives that are going to drive performance. Um, and I use some very simple tools. One of the things that I look at is just a simple 2x2 grid, which along one axis is urgency and along the other is importance. I call it the urgency importance matrix. So there are things that are not so important, um, but are either less urgent or urgent. And then there are things that are less important that are urgent and not urgent. Well, you can see where you want to focus your efforts and locate the projects that you want to focus on. It's where there is a high importance and there's an urgency, and be sure that they are contributing to driving the business and growth of the business. So that's the first thing, summarized just one word: focus. Focus. Secondly, I mentioned it a couple of times, the advice I would give is work collaboratively with colleagues internally and externally, because partnerships, particularly with external, for example, suppliers, distributors, joint venture partners, those partnerships are critical to success. So working collaboratively is critical, and that's a piece of advice that I would give. And alongside that, to be more specific in the context of starting a business, have a partner or two where you have complementary skills, you have different knowledge sets, you have relevant but different experiences where they are all complementary. And of course, the big advantage is also that you get to share the workload. So working collaboratively is critical for me, and the second piece of advice that I would give. The third one that comes to mind, I alluded to it just a moment ago, and that's driving performance, because it comes back to that. And performance for me means top line, in other words, revenue, and also profit, to give you sustainability. Now, sustainability you can define in many different ways, financial and non-financial. Here I'm talking about financial sustainability, because you're not able to pursue any other type of sustainability in a world of sustainability transformation, where companies are looking at sustainability in many different ways. But the point being is that drive performance, ensure or achieve sustainability, economic sustainability, financial sustainability, so that you have a future, not just for yourself, your senior leadership team, but for the whole company. And that it directly supports society and the people in the society, particularly those in the local area to where you have your business. This is always assuming you have offices and warehouses or factories and similar infrastructure. So those are the things that I would say as important that I've learned, and what advice I would give to anyone that's starting out with a business.
And we've talked quite a lot, on this Leader Series podcast about setting up businesses. And to what you were saying there about collaboration and setting those goals and working hard, when it comes to it, working, it can be quite a lonely task, I guess, can't it? When you're like one or two people or one person trying to set
Oh my
up this
goodness me,
business.
yes.
So this is where groups. I mean, we're involved now with something called the Reading Tech Cluster, which is helping Thames Valley technology businesses to thrive in the current environment. Is it quite easy for the founders or starters or entrepreneurs to find these sorts of groups? Where should they go, Jurek? If someone's listening to this and thinking, I want to start a business, and I'm not at Henley Business School. I'm not clever enough to get into Henley Business School. Where do you go?
What's interesting, because at my business clinic yesterday, two of the students had asked just that question. Where do I find a partner? I only have these skills, whatever those skills might be. I need these additional skills. Where do I go to find them? Well, the first place to start, of course, is your immediate community. If you're at business school, you've got a community. You've got a community that comprises of faculty as well as peers. You've got societies of various descriptions. For example, we have an entrepreneurship society. It's a student-led entrepreneurship society. It's the largest society on campus other than sports societies. So you can reach out to them and advertise and say, I have this idea. I'm starting out, but I need additional capacity. Okay, people, time. With these types of skills, and that facilitates, and you're from the same community, and that sort of facilitates or enables you to find somebody usually fairly quickly, and they do. But there are many other events let me describe them that way, where they're created or launched to facilitate networking. So, for example, Enterprise Nation has a number of events, including their startup show, which is in January, where you have speakers, but yes, it also invites many wannabe entrepreneurs or those who recently started a business to come and talk to people, to network and find partners. You can find partners in other events that might be organized by, for example, your local business growth hub. This is set up to, again, support those that are starting out on businesses, want to scale businesses, want to connect with others. They're there to help, and they have business advisors to help you make those connections. The Chamber of Commerce has many events, all of which are designed to facilitate networking, where you can find partners and work together, and even explore opportunities that come by way of potential to merge or to join in partnerships to co-promote or co-develop or whatever it might be. So there's many places you can go to, and I find myself giving that piece of advice more often than any other advice to founders of businesses.
Yeah, I guess it's something to know there's that network that can support you and help you to, we've talked so much about challenges and problems and weighing up risks in this conversation, that this is exactly where you need someone to help you out, and these are all
Well,
the things that you
exactly.
can get, isn't it? So yeah. um the other question I had for you, kind of thinking about like today's world, maybe in relation to, do you feel with technology and with the support and with the platform that technology can give you, that it makes starting up a business easier in this day and age, or is it equally as hard, or if not more hard?
Well, technology, let me be specific. There's technology, it's an umbrella term for many different technologies. Now, technologies in their own right do not represent opportunities. They enable opportunities to be exploited. So if you talk about generative AI tools, and there are many of them, and there are more being introduced on a regular basis, or
They probably
or
have
whether
been while
or
we've been
whether
doing this podcast, sure.
well, for example, absolutely. Um, um, there are robotic automation. There is gene splicing, gene editing. Um, Many different technologies that should be embraced, not pushed back, but embraced. And the leader of any business today should be looking at what technologies are out there that helps us to become more efficient on the one hand, meaning reducing our costs, but still performing at the same level, if not increasing our performance. And at the same time, enabling us to help our customers deliver success in their own right. In other words, create value for our customers. And that should be an ongoing conversation and should be a regular item on the board agenda for discussion. Um, and the chief technology officer should be reporting on a regular basis as to what technology is being implemented, how it's performing in helping us to achieve our financial goals, as well as non-financial goals, CSR and EDI and similar. So technology plays an important role. Absolutely, it plays an important role, and I would urge and advise every business leader, every leadership team, embrace technology. There's technology out there that will help you become more efficient and help you deliver an outstanding performance through satisfying your customers' needs and building those customers and developing those customers into, as I mentioned from the beginning, sales ambassadors where they can promote your products and services.
And I think, from my side as well, when you think about setting up a business, you've got a much, you know, you can do anything, can't you? You can disrupt things when you're setting up a business. a larger business, when they're thinking about technology and platforms, you can't do these things because you've got 1,000 employees, you've got a set structure of the way you can do it. Whereas as a startup, that is the excitement and the competitiveness of a startup. You can do whatever you want, right?
Yep. But you need policies. Of course you do. And I won't argue against policies, but they can be a barrier too.
Mm,
Now,
yeah,
someone who of an entrepreneurial mindset, and I do um, offer advice on how to develop your entrepreneurial mindset. One of the first things is really taking action. Don't go through endless analyses, reviews, insights, only to find that you all get exhausted after 6, 12 months of carrying out those analyses and insights and research. Do it. If you're 70% believing that this will work, just do it and learn by that very action.
brilliant. And okay, so just to kind of finish off now, Jurek, and it's been a fantastic conversation as I knew it would be. What are you most excited about for the year ahead for your businesses? Really, have you got some good businesses that you're working with? I know you probably won't name all of them, but have you got some excellent prospects that you can see really growing and expanding in the next few years?
Well, the answer is yes. I'm
That's good
focused
news.
on new solutions. So with all this,
Mm,
the crisis that we have, and the new world order, the uncertainties, the unpredictability, the rest of it, that where there is conflict, confusion, contradiction, you know. There is also opportunity for the entrepreneur, hence the importance of having and building your entrepreneurial mindset. And that means new solutions to problems. Problems that solutions that are enabled by technology, going back to the previous point. And not to forget some of the ones that are attracting a lot of attention right now, beyond AI, quantum computing, for example. Uh, um, Innovation is going to be this. Innovation is obviously something that in simple terms is really just converting an idea into some reality. But it's not just about innovation in products, it's innovation in processes, in the business paradigm of the company, changing that strategy. This is all innovation is going to enable the company to succeed. When the world is changing, you've got to change. And that means delivering new solutions, better solutions, improving on your processes, innovation in training of the people in the organization. So innovation is going to be critical. And how do we innovate? Well, we need to be innovative, and that comes from the top, and the leader that has a clear statement that recognizes innovation as key to driving our success in the long term. So um, that is critical for me. And I would always ask any business leader, whether it's in formal conversation or informal conversation, tell me how you are innovating in the company, not just with products, but in everything that you do, and how you do it, from processes, as I say, to your business model. How are you innovating? Because you have to innovate. If you don't innovate, you will die.
exactly, or not even get going if you're a startup. So.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Well, it sounds like you're
Exactly.
working with some. Sound like you're working with some very interesting businesses, Jurek. I look forward to as we set off on our journey. We're working with different hubs and different clusters over the next few months and years, and I think we'll post quite a lot about them social media wise. So I'm looking forward to that within the TVAI hub, within the Reading Tech cluster, and obviously kind of getting more involved with the Henley Business School and what you're doing with your angel investments. So it's a lot of interesting things there, and I think I respect you greatly for what you're doing, Jurek, because I think developing the next generation of local business is something that's really good. So thank you very much, Jurek.
My great pleasure. I've enjoyed our conversation. Thank you for your time, David, and look forward to continuing to work with you.
Fantastic. Thank you very much.